It's a yes. Okay, I think we're ready to launch. Okay, we're calling the policy committee meeting to order for August 18th, 2015. Welcome. And has the meeting been posted?
Yes, it has.
Thank you. And we have a quorum. Well, actually, we have a full board. Any citizens here to be heard? I don't believe so. Okay. And so we will move on to our action items. One is to approve our minutes from July. Everybody got those? Okay, we have a motion. Second. Okay. And no corrections I'm hearing. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, those are approved. And the other action item is the guideline to students' rights and responsibilities, which we have. We did, I believe, right, present this. And so we'll be looking at it again. I have not heard from anyone. Has anyone here heard any comments, feedback from anyone on the board? No?
This is the first time this is coming.
Yeah, but I think people were alerted it was coming, so let's hear more about it, and we'll take it from there. Joe, did you want to introduce it, or should we just turn it over to you?
We do have Dan and Brian here to comment on policy 5131G.
Yeah, okay, very good, and just for the purpose of, introduce yourselves.
I'm Brian Schley, Athletic Director and Assistant Principal at Waukesha North High School.
Okay,
Dan Domak, Assistant Principal, Athletic Director at Waukesha South.
great. We know you, but other people, the vast audience on TV maybe doesn't. Okay, go ahead, take it away.
We have two adjustments, major adjustments that we wanted to make. And if you take a look, our first major point was that there were 24 different, which are on Appendix B.
Oh, okay, that would help.
I'm sorry about that. There's 24 points of designated athletic code violations. And what Column U at West and Brian and I did was we sat down, and we kind of took a look at that list, and that list is a good 30 years old. And I'm not exactly sure, because I'm actually starting my 19th year as an athletic director. I never remember ever re-looking at this and making some adjustments to it. As I talk to kids and parents, some of these that are on there, if you look at number 16, unauthorized use of pagers or two-way communication devices, basically what we're saying is that kids can't have cell phones, according to this statement.
That's right.
So.
Or they can't use them in an unauthorized way.
Correct. But what we wanted to do is we wanted to take a look at what we could kind of combine and make it more of a 15-point policy instead of the 24 points that were down there. So you can see there's a number of them that have been crossed off.
Right.
And again, we just tried to make it more friendly for us from a perspective of trying to explain to families of how we came about the information that we're going to be dealing with their child with.
So can I just ask that in response to what you're saying?
Sure.
Do you, I mean, we can hold this off for another month. You were saying you kind of like to rewrite it?
No. This is one of the points that we did. We took a look at Appendix B, and we reduced Appendix B from 24 points down to 15.
What page are you referring to? Page 4?
Appendix B, which is page 14.
The very last.
But it's very confusing the way it sits here. Don't you think?
From a standpoint of where Appendix B is, or?
No, just the whole structure, because you've taken out defiance of authority. Okay, that may be good. Willful disobedience. You took out 24, you took out part of a couple others. Took out the violation of bus rider rules. So I would think when this comes to the board, they won't kind of like it the spotty way that it is, right? It's very confusing.
Well, these are the proposals that we would strike that language, and I believe the underlined language is the modified.
Yeah,
So I believe we were required to leave that.
well, the
Yeah.
red underlined is, but the stricken out black is. So what would help, I mean, I guess I'm just saying, I don't want to make work for you, but if you want to present it this way so people can see what the changes were, then a clean revised Appendix B attached is probably what the board would like to see.
Sure.
I can do that.
Rather than with the correction.
Yeah, because it's kind of a mishmash. And also, I would think, now again, I'm guessing about my fellow board members, but you don't want to include violation of academic honesty policy? I mean, I guess I would question if I were a board member where I take some of these things out.
Well, again, we sat down and we basically looked at that from a perspective of not a athletic code violation or an athletic area. We looked at it more from coming as a school consequence. We had kind of talked among the three of us from a perspective of how many of those we actually have seen in our history as being assistant principals in charge of athletics. I've maybe had 2. I know that West hasn't had very many, and I think Brian's saying 0.
Yeah.
So we just felt that it could be looked at from it's still in there from a school standpoint. This is just the athletic piece.
I understand that.
Question, please.
Yes, please.
So Dan, what happens if a student does violate number 8? Then the school deals with it with consequences rather than the athletic director,
Correct,
even if the student's an athlete?
correct.
Okay, so it's not saying it's not being addressed, it's just not being addressed by you.
Correct.
Okay.
I think we found in terms of, on our assistant principal side of the role, that a lot of times classroom teachers want the latitude to be able to work with the student and counsel them, and maybe a classroom level consequence is more appropriate, and that they spend some time working after school and revising maybe something that they could have done better in their own words or things like that, versus automatically having to take a kid to the maximum penalty for something. And I think that maybe even some teachers avoided even reporting it because they felt like it was too harsh for something that they could really.
So this is part of your school rules or school handbook or student handbook that you give to the students, so they understand that cheating,
Correct.
you know, is punishable with consequences. Okay, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it has to be punishable for athletic events.
Correct.
Okay. So what are the consequences for that type of behavior in the school? Would it be, well, I don't know, what would it be?
Well, if I could direct your attention to page 4, Barb.
Okay,
On page 4 is the unacceptable conduct for every single student in the school district of Waukesha.
okay, great.
That has not changed. So that used to be the 24-point list, which was revised in the recent year or two to different levels with different discipline at each level. And so you'll see those things are all still there for all students. So I just wanted to point that out as we're
Oh, that's real
discussing.
helpful. Thanks, Lynn. But I guess, I was a coach, and it was a while ago, but I think that the double emphasis of some of these things for athletes probably wouldn't hurt, I guess, is all I'm thinking. Unless you guys sit down at the beginning of every season with every team and go through the student code too. Do you?
Well, I mean, from a standpoint of the athletic piece, we have our parent-athlete meetings with our incoming freshmen.
Right.
At our class meetings that we have in the first week of school at all 3 schools,
Right.
these are discussed and brought to the attention of
These being,
the messages from a standpoint of the rules and regulations from the overall student from page 4.
right.
Those are brought to the attention of the entire class.
So you don't do it with each team, each season, each sport?
No, we don't.
Wouldn't that be a good idea?
From a perspective of how that would be able to be done, I mean, what we're dealing with right now is that we really want to get the parents there so the parents understand what the rules are.
Yeah.
My meeting is tomorrow night
For parents of all athletes.
of all the
sports.
freshmen. Every year we have a meeting with the freshman parents. I don't know about North, I'm not exactly sure about West, but I'm having issues with parents at South where they're telling me, I've had one son, one daughter go through this meeting. Why do I need to come back and listen to the meeting again?
Okay.
And we're trying to explain to them that, you know, this is your child, they've not heard the message, we really think it's important for you and your child to hear the message again. The message does get adjusted depending upon rules and regulations that have adjusted at all 3 high schools. But it's a very difficult process. I mean, we're getting a lot of fight from parents, from a standpoint of what is the importance of this meeting. And we've been running this meeting for 19 years.
So you don't get real good attendance then?
Well, they have to, one way or another, they're not, their
Every
child is.
freshman?
Every freshman athlete
Oh, every freshman
has to
athlete.
attend this meeting. So we have one meeting in August for the fall. We have a meeting at winter time in November, and we have a meeting in the spring and March. And if a family attends the meeting in August and their child is a track athlete, they're all taken care of for the entire year.
Okay,
If they're a fall athlete, they must attend that meeting or see the video of the meeting and be signed off by us. They come to school to watch the video,
okay.
and then they are accepted and can play in games. They can practice, but they just cannot play in games until they see the rules and regulations.
And that's just freshmen?
That's just freshmen. So as you think of it, as they move from year to year, yes, we do not have a straight conversation with sophomore parents, junior parents, and senior parents.
I guess just to continue,
Yeah.
and I'll get to you, why not with each student, each sport? I mean, parents are important, but if you're having trouble with them, why not emphasize this with each student, each sport? And have them sign a code, don't they sign the code?
They do sign the code when they sign the physical card or the alternate year card. There is a statement on there basically saying that they have agreed to the code of conduct, yes.
And they have a copy of it?
If they keep a copy of it, yes, as the physical card or the alternate year card,
And
But
that's
we-
every year you do?
every year, yes.
We maintain records of that when they turn in their
Okay, well,
athletic
that
forms
makes
each
sense.
year.
I mean, even if the parents aren't front and center. One other question, and I'll let Ms. Brzezinski speak. I'm still concerned with 23, because on this board, and certainly in other schools, bullying has been a big issue. And we've had situations come before expulsion panels in the town where the athletic leaders were not really enforcing the bullying policy, and we've had some very heinous things occur. So what concerns me in looking at 23 is the word repeated, because that's not quantifiable, and why isn't bullying stopped the first and only time it might occur? Why does it have to be repeated before a coach might do something about it?
And again, we also have coaches' meetings. Again, for example, tomorrow night at 5 o'clock, I have an assistant coaches meeting for all my fall coaches. A week and a half ago, I had all my fall head coaches in for a meeting. We spend about 5 minutes at that meeting discussing bullying and discussing hazing and reviewing that, reminding them where they have to be.
Where do they have to be?
Well, in the locker rooms, throughout, watching as
Right.
kids are leaving and coming to practice.
And
So,
how often does it have to be repeated before they're asked to take action?
to be perfectly honest with you, if they see bullying or hazing occurring, it's not repeated, it's
Okay,
dealt
then
with.
why don't we take the word repeated out? I guess
Sure.
is my point.
That-
Sure.
That's a
I mean,
part
it
of the
should be
original policy.
stopped, and it should be stopped immediately, and in our other, on page 4, with bullying, I don't think we say repeated. So here, all of a sudden, we're saying repeated, and that, I think that just begs the bag
I
question.
agree.
Sure.
I would just ask perhaps if we could make sure that the wording in that statement aligns with the district anti-bullying policy, just so that we have some,
Yeah,
a good
'cause I
clean
just-
cross-reference there.
Consistency, yeah.
And I just think often it's in locker rooms, sadly to say, but that's what we've seen on expulsion panels, where some of this horrible behavior of one athlete against another occurs.
Again, we didn't create that language,
No, I know that, but you
Right.
just reviewed it, and
Yes.
it's in there, so
and
I think
I agree, it's
Yeah,
something we
that
we
makes
miss.
sense.
that, okay, thank you.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Ms. Brazil.
No, that's okay. I agree with Joe. I think maybe the bullying for Appendix B should be the same as bullying for all students.
Right.
Yeah, I think, I mean, it says the same thing that you said, only it elaborates it a little bit.
Yeah.
You know, Dan, I'm wondering, some kids don't go out when they're freshmen. I mean, I know my husband didn't play football till he was a senior. You know, what do you do with those kids that come on later?
Well, what happens is that if they come on later as a sophomore, junior, or senior, my secretary, and I know Brian's secretary and Kyle's secretary have a listing of who's attended. So if it's a brand-new student to our building from another school, they have to attend a meeting
Okay,
in that particular season to be
okay.
able to listen to the presentation.
But what if it's not a brand-new student?
If it's a student that decides as a sophomore to go out
Yeah.
for football,
Or
they
track?
will or track, whatever it is,
whatever,
they
yeah.
will attend the meeting, or
Okay,
they will not be allowed to
okay,
participate in a game, a meet, or an
Okay.
event.
In the same system that we track that they turn in their medical information, physical, everything like that, it lists whether or not they've attended that meeting and signed off on the policy. So we track it the same way.
And do the parents have to sign too?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, okay, so,
Oh, yeah.
thank you, that covers what I was concerned about on part one. Other questions, Ms. Randy?
Sure. I just saw where number 15 and number 21 could be combined if number 15 says use, possession, sale, distribution, or being under the influence of alcohol or any other illegal controlled substance. And then 21 is attending an event where alcohol or other drugs were present or being consumed. You could just say, you could put that into one. But I just wanted to run through, let's say a student, let's just pick one, repeated tardiness on number 13. So they're having issues with being on time for whatever reason, and their teacher at school for that class talks to them or, tries to say, what's going on? Is it your ride? Why are you being tardy? When does it go to you? Like when you said you've had less than 2 violations in all this time, I can't imagine a child not being excessively tardy for you. Like you said, it's been handled through the teachers at school. But when does this come to you? Like if it still goes on, then do you have a talk with them saying, hey, we really want you to play ball. You've got to get this under control. When do these, if you're not putting them into, if you're not using these, kind of tell me the order of how this goes to where it does end up on your desk, or how you would.
One of the things we looked at specifically with that number was especially over the last year or two, the 3 high schools have really tightened up around state law on attendance. And the way that we use the attendance flow chart at North High School is we have progress monitoring for students' attendance. So when they have 5 tardies or 3 absences, each day that they miss a class or that they're absent, they get phone calls home. When they get to 3 or 5 in that instance, they get a letter home warning them about their attendance and the potential for consequences up to a truancy ticket. Then when they get to 5 of those days of absences or 10 tardies, we have a personalized attendance meeting with our social worker, school counselors, assistant principal, and the family that the family is required to attend. And if they continue to truant or tardy after that, they receive a truancy citation when they reach the limit on state law. So the way I guess we had looked at that in our discussion was that is a very specific set of consequences that refer directly back to that behavior. And
So when would sports be involved? When
After 5.
the WIA rules indicate when they miss a certain amount of class during a day that they're not allowed to participate for that day. So we hold them out of their practices or events on those days that they have those issues.
okay.
And at South, we do have our teachers work with our coaches from a perspective of if our teachers at the beginning of the school year get a conversation going, what are you involved in school? I'm a football player. 3 weeks into school, they've been tardy 10 times. Well, what'll happen in most cases is that teacher will in case contact my football coach and say, can you give me some help? Or contact me, and then I'll bring the 2 of them together so that they can have a conversation. It works from a perspective. The problem, though, is that you can drill them until the end of the season, and then as soon as the season ends,
That's it.
there's nothing else that holds the person to the attendance factor.
Sure.
So, but my coaches do work with our teachers.
So you have been working with this, you just haven't cut anyone for, let's say, being tardy or something. You've been working with teachers to try to enforce these all along.
Yes.
It's just not that you've had to deal with them 2 times on this in 19 years, it's that.
Well, I mean, it was, we were talking about one particular topic
Oh,
out of
okay.
these 24 here.
Okay,
I mean, last year I had 30 athletic code violations. I'm averaging probably maybe between 20 and 25 a year.
okay, I thought
So,
you hadn't
No,
even,
no, that was just the one topic that we were talking about.
I see. I thought you hadn't enforced or these never even
No.
came to you in all that time.
No,
I was like, well then.
Next
why
time
do
you're
we-
at South, I'd love to show you my files. Stop in.
Okay, hopefully none are my children.
Yeah.
I think
Never know.
we really drew on the experience of what do we see as things that are really severe and things that we can very clearly step in and enforce, and where are some areas that we more often see people working one-on-one with their teachers and students, or if we have already a program in place that addresses that in a direct manner. Those are kind of the ones we looked at modifying or removing.
I have one more question.
Yes.
When you say that you don't talk this over with the students, whether it's these in particular, whether it's sophomore, junior, senior, or freshman, I think just a little bit, you said you touched on it. Do you think that they already know this and they know how they're supposed to behave, or do you think a refresher would help? Do you think, I know there's not enough time, you want to get out there and you want to practice so that you can be competitive, but do you think it would help just to kind of refresh, hey, you guys, if you want to be here, if you want to play ball, you need to be on time. You need to do this. If you're at a party when you see alcohol, you need to leave, or you're not going to be playing in a game. You know, do you just kind of remind them and kind of set the tone for the year? Do you think that would help?
Well, I mean, our coaches are doing that all the time.
Okay.
You know, right now, what's happening in the city of Waukesha is that there are junior-senior wars going on, at least on our side of town, where the juniors and the seniors will toilet paper each other's homes and take it up a couple of notches. And we've basically have had, I've talked to all my coaches, and all my coaches have sat their teams down and have told them if that they're going to continue this, there's a possibility that they could receive an athletic code violation for being involved in this. So I use my coaches a lot to say, this is happening, talk to your team and let them know. We started 4 sports yesterday. So the teams aren't picked at this point, so once the teams are picked in the next couple of days, those coaches will take that time then to sit down and go through the rules and go through the regulations of what they can do and what they can't do. And that's for, again, the freshmen are getting it with their parents, and we're giving them a lot of information in about a 45-minute to an hour meeting, and they're walking out swimming. So we give them packets of this kind of information so that they can take it home. But I'll be honest with you, we deal with it all the time. I didn't know. I didn't know that I couldn't do that. Even though we talk about it at the meetings and go through the things, but a lot of it just goes right over the top of the head
If they don't
until
like
it's
it.
now time.
And when we look at the progression of a preseason for the parents and athletes for the freshmen at least coming in and doing this required meeting, then going to their required coaches meeting that they have, every coach has a team meeting at the beginning there with their parents and players and reviews their expectations for the season. And then within the first 2 weeks of school, we have grade level meetings where we talk about the general school rules, and then on top of that, reminding athletes that they're held to the athletic code. And we don't go point by point through the whole thing, but we remind them that they're above and beyond in that and they're expected to know it.
Couldn't
So,
you go point by point? Would it be a good idea, since he's saying that it goes out of their heads?
honestly, the amount of time that we're taking students away from instruction during those is pretty lengthy already when we cover the entire grounds of lunches, hallways.
No, I'm just talking about
everything.
sports. Couldn't the coaches go through this point by point? Don't you
Well,
think
they
would be
do.
good?
Well, they
Since
do.
Dan just said it goes out of their heads. Wouldn't that be a good idea to reinforce it?
We could certainly look into that from a perspective of how we could get the message out.
If we want them to take it seriously, I would think.
Right,
they would.
and again, I mean, to be honest with you, they are taking it seriously. And, you know, what happens from an athletic code standpoint is that, again, this is just me, but I'm about 50% freshman every year of getting athletic code violations because the pieces just don't fit. And from what I mean by that is that they think they're invincible, and they're coming off of select teams, they're coming off of all these things,
Yeah.
and there's never been any rules or regulations for them before. And now all of a sudden, there's rules and regulations, and we have to explain to them that you can't get into a fight in school. That's an athletic code violation. You know, you can't go to a party where alcohol is present. If you leave the party, that's perfect, that's what you have to do. But if you stay, you're going to get yourself in trouble. If you
Yeah.
partake, you're going to get yourself in trouble. So there's just again, until and I guess I can use, when I started this 19 years ago, I developed the meeting, and I came back the second year and tried to do it for everybody else again, and I was crucified. Because parents felt that their children received the message last year, they received the message last year,
They know.
and why do I have to come back? I mean, the goal was to try to put it together.
Right, that's parents. We're talking about just emphasizing it with the athletes.
Right, and what we can do is we can create some type of a packet that we can have the coaches sit down with the athletes on a particular night after practice, just to review some of the major points. That would probably be a very good suggestion.
And I think out of 470 athletes that we had go out for sports, I had 14 code violations, which is 14 too many. But for those other 460 kids, they feel like they're being punished by having to sit through it again, which it's good to, and I agree with the reminder, and I think we can develop something for coaches to go over at their meetings. But for the most part, our kids are great, and there are probably the 14 that I had were repeat offenders, and I think you may have seen a few on pre-expulsion and things like that for multiple behavior issues and other things going on in their families and communities, so.
Thank you for being open to it. Did you, have you had?
Yeah, I've got several things. I do agree that every year it doesn't hurt to remind the kids via the coaches. In defense of athletes, I come from a strong athletic family, as you well know. I had, my husband, my son, 4 grandsons who all played, and my one grandson just graduated from a Division I football program, and believe me, he sold his soul to the school. It is so strict. It is so structured. You don't step out of line once without missing a practice or without missing a game. So they know from high school on, and they all knew in high school, they better behave themselves, that a little bit more was expected of them. And my husband coached in Waukesha, so I know what you believe in, and I know that, you do articulate it pretty clearly to the athletes. This is what's expected of you. Is it a little bit more than the other students? Well, of course, they represent our school district, and they better behave themselves. And so I think we do a pretty good job, but it doesn't hurt to remind them and remind them and remind them. Kids can never be reminded enough, but I do know that your high school athletes have a pretty strict code of behavior that they have to follow, and you set that up. So keep it up. Please keep it up. It's very important. I would like to know, however, just 2 real picayune things. You referred to their behavior. I think it was, let's see, on page 8. And you talk about in activity eligibility, the 3rd line, it says, you expect them to represent the school in a public manner. I guess I don't know what you mean by a public manner.
What line are you on?
There's no line number,
Oh,
Ellen. It's,
Roman numeral 3A.
yeah, Roman numeral 3A, the 3rd sentence down at the end. It says, and represent the school in a public manner. And I don't know what a public manner is, because in public, people behave all kinds of ways. And I guess I don't know what that means. And maybe we should put in a word that's a little bit more definitive. I'm gonna leave that up to you, but,
I think that was the original language from the policy, because the
probably.
the code, the activities that are specifically listed to be held to the code are the ones that have public performances, such as the marching bands, the drama, things like that. So I think and I can't say because this was before I think I was born that this was written, but
You're right.
not to date
Yeah,
myself.
that's
But
how
it
bad
should,
I feel.
it should be a little bit more definitive, what, appropriate
I-
manner or proper manner?
Yeah,
But
I would-
again,
I would
appropriate and
agree.
proper are based on your values. It's a judgment
We've
call.
done the same with 25, conduct on becoming an athlete. It's a judgment.
It's a judgment, yeah.
But I think our leaders have a sense of what that is, and I think the students, if they aren't conducting themselves, they know.
Yeah, I think the spirit of the conduct on becoming of an athlete was that question you ask when you're working with a student who's made a mistake of whether they think they represented the school in a positive way or not, and
Yeah.
they can pretty clearly see that it wasn't, and that's why that they would fall under that.
Well, if you do anything well, you certainly make those students feel that it's an honor. I met an alumni today who played football at South, and he was proud. He was proud that he did everything he was supposed to do to be an athlete at South, and that made me feel good, that we as a board have policies, you know, that regulate that. Also, this is another picayune thing, I'd like to call your attention to, you talk about days, number of days that a student has to appeal, and that would be on page 11. Number 6. It says, "The students and parents shall have the right to appeal. You have 7 days to appeal upon notification from the school." Now, I know we play summer baseball. Well, there's no school. So I'm wondering if we put 7 school days, or how do we really define that?
Well, again, I mean, from a perspective, we're flexible on this piece, but we needed to put a number.
Just 7 days
A number down there.
is okay?
And what happens is, as athletic directors, we send a letter home.
Okay,
We address a letter, you know, August
Okay.
18th. The letter arrives on the 22nd. They have 7 days from that point.
Okay.
If they contact us on the 8th or 9th day, we don't say, sorry, you're too late. You know, our principal will still meet with them, but if it's 2-3 months down the line and now
Well,
I want to
sure.
come in and appeal,
sure.
that's a
Sure.
little bit too late.
okay, but you do deal with that then during the summer?
Yes.
And
Because
in all of these cases, we also make phone contact directly with that parent as well and say that the letter going home is the formal written notification of it and their right to appeal it. And that's something that we cover at the parent-athlete meeting, is that sometimes their student was afraid to share something, sometimes there was something that we missed, and there's an appeal process for a reason, so that, you know, we're not infallible, or we may have been duped somehow, but it's an opportunity for them to come back to the principal and appeal that and state their case and have another impartial judgment on the matter, so.
well, whatever it is you're doing it well. I think, you know, I see baseball players, of course, and football players, and meet a lot of the athletes that play, and they take great pride in playing on that team. It's an honor to play on that team, even the guys that sit the bench. And they take great pride in being a member of that team. So whatever it is that you're doing, for that pride to continue to occur, keep it up. And, you know, I think you have to continue to be strict and have high expectations, because it is an honor and a privilege for those young men, young women to participate. So I personally thank you for all you have done. We've had some great teams, we've had some good teams. Keep it up.
Just a comment and then another question. Sure. Yeah, I would echo what Barbara Singh said, and I think we're all tickled when we sit here at board meetings and see that, that our school and our athletes and our students are getting sportsmanship awards.
Yes.
And South, you know, just got recognition as the best from all of last year. So we're very proud of that, and we compliment you, because I'm sure that comes from athletes to the crowd and so forth, too. So that's my positive comment, and to thank you for that. And thank you for your patience with our questions. I did have just one other or two other real quick things. Under Appendix A, could that just be kind of clarified? Because Appendix A, sport, up to 20%, up to 50%. I mean, could there just be a narrative at the top that indicates what exactly that means?
It explains it.
Well, it doesn't really.
Well, it says cross-country, 2 meets for up to 20% and 50%
Up to
meets.
20% of what?
It's up to 20% of the amount of games
Amount
that
of
are
games or
played.
meets, you
So
know.
the number that you
Okay.
see in parentheses after the word cross-country,
Right?
since we've done a number of changes with 5131,
Yeah?
WIA now has okayed 11 cross-country meets.
Okay.
So we have
9 football games.
20% of 11, which equates to 2 meets.
And you get 20% penalty if you do what?
That's a first-time violation.
Okay, well, that's what I think we need to
Oh,
clarify.
sure.
Okay.
Because, and 50% is like a second or
Yeah,
third time violation, and,
We could
Sure.
add a row at the top there that'd help clarify that.
yeah, that's all I would ask, is
Yeah.
just to clarify that schedule.
Point.
And then my last question, for me anyway, is, you sound like with your meetings happening and everything kicking off right now, obviously this would come forward to us in September for a first reading, so what, time-wise, you know, I've asked you maybe if you could, you know, with Lynn's help or somebody, especially Schedule B, Appendix B, clarify it. Is that doable before September?
Sure. That's very easy.
And you can make that change to A before September?
Sure.
Okay,
That's
if you
when
could do
you'll
that,
do
that
that.
would be great. But time-wise then, do you need this passed in September? Or are you're gonna go ahead into this fall without it being passed anyway, right?
Yes.
Right.
I mean,
Okay.
what we're looking at is with Appendix B, all we've done is shorten up the list. So
Right.
that's not a problem for us.
Okay.
Appendix A is just getting the numbers in sync and then
Right, clarifying what the
verifying
categories
that.
are. Okay.
The big piece that we need is the grade piece, but it really doesn't come into play until the first quarter grades. The WIA gives us the start dates on ineligible athletes every year. Using an example for soccer. Boys soccer players have to sit out 8 games before they're declared eligible. It's a 24-game season.
Wow,
Football players have to sit out 3 games
that's a lot.
for academic ineligibility. So those numbers are given to us by the WIA, but once we get to the end of the first quarter, that's when we want to use the points that we have, I believe, on page 7 and page 8. That's important to us to be able to help our athletes, just give them one more chance to readjust before we actually take them out of sports.
Okay. Okay, so then, and I guess there is another comment. Ms. Ranich.
Thank you. Did you say they, the parents have, and maybe students, have to sign something? Like you said they're given a
Athletic code.
packet.
Athletic code.
Athletic code, is that what they have to sign? Are these on there? They are. Okay, so just like our student handbook that as parents were given in the beginning of the year and we have to sign it, and if I should happen, not that this has ever happened, but if I should ever happen to sign it without reading it, and then I ask for something and they say, well, that was in the handbook, I signed it, that's my responsibility.
right.
So when you've got 50% of these, I think I'm getting your numbers correct, of these freshmen having violations, they were given
That's
those codes of conduct, and they signed it, and parents signed it. They're responsible to know it. You've given it to them, you've talked to them about it,
Yes.
they're supposed to know it.
Yes.
Okay, because what I was going to say is for the juniors, sophomores, juniors, and seniors, maybe if they're down to 15 points and it's just a half sheet of paper, just kind of handing it out and saying, hey, we're going to review this for the next 5 minutes, just look at this, and then have them sign it. Even though they haven't signed it since they were a freshman, it's not a whole meeting, but it's just a quick kind of a, hey, we're going to touch on this tonight, and just a reminder. I know you guys know this, so I'm sure there won't be any violations, however you guys handle that, but
I mean, it's certainly something that we could in turn over to our coaches as they have their meetings once their team is picked, and to review those, and then the athletes could certainly sign off on that one more time. So that's a very easy process for us.
And in the bigger picture, it's just to help them, to help themselves realize and to remember that they're supposed to stay on track and that they were told, and, that nobody's like, oh, I didn't remember that, or I didn't know that, or.
Reminders are always good.
Question, please.
Oh, yes.
Do they sign athletic code every year or just once?
They sign it at the parent-athlete meeting on a regular document, and then
Okay.
for their sophomore, junior, and senior year, it's on the physical card or
That's right.
alternate year card. So it's on there, but the 15 or 24 points are not listed there, we just don't have the space for it. So they're signing, I agree to
But
the
they know what
athletic
it
code.
means.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you. I thought they signed it every year.
And you're saying that they could be reminded.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think that's a very easy process that we
Okay.
could take care of.
So if we want to move forward, and which would mean bring it to our board for its first reading in September, then we could do so tonight if we make a motion that this would come forward with the proposed clarification and corrections.
That is correct.
All right.
Okay.
And it's a guideline, so it really only requires one meeting at the full board, so it would go for approval in
No,
September.
but it would come,
Modified and,
not come back to us first, then you're saying?
No.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
Well, then if you could circulate it to us in plenty of time, because obviously we want to review the wording. Right, before the September meeting?
Are you saying you want to hold a meeting prior to the next full board meeting to
I
review
don't
the
know, I'm
changes?
just trying to think what would be less cumbersome. Like, okay, number 23, the redefinition of bullying, obviously that whole thing has to be smoothed out, so, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if we can see it, I mean, obviously, we get our packet the Friday before the meeting, so maybe that's sufficient.
I think so.
But I know it's hard to wordsmith at a full board meeting, and if we don't still like the way it's worded, it's gonna be a little cumbersome.
Mhm.
But-
Would you rather see it more in line with page 4,
Well, that's, I think, what we've.
but amended to
Said.
meet the needs of the athletic directors?
Mhm.
I think that would work.
More matching language?
I think we would want to see it matching the district anti-bullying policy,
Yep.
word for
Yeah,
word.
that would be
I think
easy
that's
enough.
what we were saying.
Yeah.
Okay, then that
And
can,
you can send out a draft this Friday and then let them look, if it's okay, fine, if not, then we can go.
That sounds good.
So that gives you a little bit of time
Okay.
to rework anything that the committee doesn't.
Right, that's
Okay.
kind of what my
okay.
aim was, yeah.
Okay.
All right, with that in mind then, if we make a motion to bring it forward to the board in our September meeting, we would be moving and seconding this to pass with the proposed clarification, revisions and so forth. Is that
Okay.
acceptable?
Yes, so therefore I'll make a motion to accept policy number 5131G, guidelines to student rights and responsibility as amended.
Okay,
And I'll second.
all right, very good. Long discussion, but thank you for your
That's good.
patience, and I think it was a good one. I'm
Thank
glad
you.
we did.
Thank you.
Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, and thank you, Lynn, and we'll see it before.
Thank you.
Okay,
Good luck to all the Waukesha
absolutely.
teams that are going to be playing this fall.
Yep,
Bring us victories, lots of victories.
We'll do our best.
lots of good games.
Have a good night, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, and then these information items we did bring forward, I did not get any feedback, did anyone else from our our meeting last week, the weapons in school policy, I didn't get any questions. And also the student assessments.
Assessments, right.
So those are just back in front of us in case we got, right,
Mm-hmm.
feedback, which I don't believe we did.
We did.
So then they'll come forward for approval at September, that'll be their second reading. Okay, just so we're on the same page.
So we don't need motions?
No.
Right, no.
No. Okay, and I think Kurt O'Brien, but I didn't have a chance to catch that, for our September policy meeting is gonna come forward with something that he talked to me about the other day, but you'll hear from him, or you'll hear from me, or I'll hear from Kurt, or whatever. Yeah, so, other than that, are there any other issues that we need to address? No, hearing none. Thank you, everyone, for good discussion, and I think our meeting is adjourned.